Welcome to Talk Real Media's Taboo Podcast, where we talk about the shit that unites us. I am your host, M. Mays, and I'd like to thank you for supporting independent journalism. Grateful that you are joining us here as part of the May We Prevail mental health campaign, and for this edition of Matters of Mental Health. Today's guest just so happens to be one of the most important people in my life. My introduction to mental health, what it is, why it's important, stems from this person's experience. So in a way, we have them to a credit for not only being here, but for being a motivating factor as a driving force behind the dedication and urgency I now possess for this topic. Mental health is a vitally imperative concept for us all because it does not discriminate against anybody. This person wears an unlimited amount of hats in this lifetime, has served as an educator and teacher, devoted caretaker, has an incredible heart for service, and has come an extraordinarily long way throughout their healing journey. So, Dee, thanks so much for taking time to be here with me today. How goes it?
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm grateful that we both have made it to this point to be here together. What a gift.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and start out by obtaining a little information as to what mental health means to you. So what is your definition of mental health?
Gosh, I'm so hard at this. Mental health. I really don't know.
Okay.
I know
fair.
what mental illness is, I guess, more than I know what mental health is.
Okay, so what
the labels just bother me a lot. Mental health. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer.
That's all right. It doesn't need to be even worded in that way. How about what isn't mental health? You know, what's your definition of mental illness then, from your perception?
I guess I think there's just a lot of labels. I think that people kind of label themselves and then they fall into that and sort of, or the doctor tells them what they have and then they decide that's, their life or, and then that's their limits, So I would say that mental wellness really would be, we all suffer from something, but like pushing through it, I'm a big, let's push through it. And I'm a big, let's not, make excuses, I don't want to belittle anybody's, what they're feeling, but, feelings are feelings, and that's just what they are,
Yeah, absolutely. And, to be honest, this is kind of how I feel about it. Maybe you agree. The things we go through in life, they all differ per individual, of course, but they impact us kind of on a similar level in terms of, like, having an impact on our cells, our fibers, our mental state, our emotions. So is it almost fair to say that all of us have a touch to some extent or another of mental illness?
I think, yeah. I think that maybe some people hide it better. Some people deal with it better. Some people don't let it stop them better, But, yeah, and I think under this right circumstances, too, almost feel like if you're not depressed in the way that the world is right now, then maybe you are more mentally ill than all the rest of us.
Yes, I could not agree more. And I like your version of the mental wellness, because mental health can almost feel a bit daunting, for those of us who struggle with it, for those of us who have maybe never kind of obtained it in our own way. So it can almost put like an unfair type of pressure on us, like, oh my goodness, I'm so unhealthy because I have mental things going on, right? Language matters. So why do you believe that mental wellness matters? Why is it something we should pay attention to and try to pursue for ourselves?
Well, I guess, really the thing is that you can try to ignore it or live past it or through it, but you might be affecting people around you, like your children. I think for me, I was probably affecting my kids more than I realized, So I think that's the most important. It's good to be healthy for yourself, but when you have people counting on you, then it's really important.
Yes, and I think that's kind of a misconception we have in general. We may forget that our parents or our caretakers, whoever that may be, are also just human people who have their own kind of healing journeys too. So that's a valid point.
Think of that. You don't think of that when you're a kid, though. And that's
of course
just part of being a kid.
Right. And for an adult that hasn't yet kind of explored or been able to come to a point that they understand the concept of mental wellness and why it matters and is important to them, they might not know or see it either, like you mentioned before. And I just want to take it back a little bit to something else you said in the beginning. We're going to get more into this later, but, the whole kind of not dwelling, not sulking, not getting caught up in it. I just want people listening to really understand that even though that might hit you like, oh, wow, that I don't like the way that sounds or feels, I just really want it understood that the person who's saying this
well, let me just give you some of my diagnosis. Okay?
Go ahead. Yes, that'd be perfect.
Okay. So I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, from being held hostage as a teenager and tortured and brainwashed and beaten and raped repeatedly for a number of years. Okay. I have that also from molestation as a child, from incest, and then, child abuse, and then being homeless. So I have all this complex post-traumatic stress. It could be, I have, severe depression, like severe suicidal depression, and have attempted suicide many times. And let's see, what else? What else do I? Anxiety. I have, you name it. I don't have schizophrenia. The shorter list is probably what I don't have. At least what I diagnosis as far as the medical profession. So yeah, it's not coming from somebody who just is doesn't get it, because I get it. Okay, I fight it every single day, every day.
Yeah.
And some days I do better than others.
Sure.
But yeah.
Well, just the fact that you not only survive those experiences, but that you've kind of made it in a circle, in a sense that now, you're not only willing to share, but, this can help, so many others. So I guess it's safe to say, and thank you so much for sharing all of that, that this is something you didn't really have a grasp on or understanding much, from a young age, because it sounds like you were kind of having to exist in survival mode.
Right. So yeah, I was in survival. It wasn't I didn't even hear the word or the diagnosis or any PTSD until I was, in my 30s, almost 40s. That's when people started to, so, and now it's real common, and you hear about it every day, and people say they have it from seeing a spider. But seriously.
Yeah. I know.
But, complex PTSD is different, a little different than just your average post-traumatic stress. And none of it's fun, Yeah, I don't know.
It sounds almost like...
go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
Well, so a lot of it, I don't have my list of diagnoses in front of me, but it's been everything from what I've already said to, borderline personality to, I don't know, bipolar, you name it, pretty much, you name it, So I have to take those labels with a grain of salt, and, I think you should too. Not you necessarily, because I know not you, but just people in general.
Anyone.
You know what I mean?
Because
you can really, really get stuck in that and be like, I have depression and I can't get out of bed, or I can't,
I've had those moments. I still do it.
Oh my gosh, I have those moments.
For sure.
Yeah.
Every day.
But nothing about that, is ever going to make you feel better. That's the problem. That's my thing, okay?
It's true.
You don't ever feel better just saying I can't. You don't ever feel better not getting out of bed. And you can. Physically, you can, okay? You really can. You might feel like you can't, because I know sometimes even taking a shower is like moving a boulder,
Yes.
But literally, okay, and physically you can. Your legs aren't broken or cut off at the hip, You can. But it takes a lot. It's really not easy. But, there's nothing that's going to make you feel better about not, the only thing, here's the deal with, medication, counseling. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it if it helps you, great. You should really research what that medication is doing to your brain, and your chemicals, and if you'll ever be able to get off of it, and that kind of a thing. But I'm not going to judge it for anybody else. But I know that it doesn't cure it, okay? And neither does laying in bed saying you can't. And neither does getting out of bed and going and doing something, but at least you can be productive. At least you can maybe help somebody else. At least you'll find a minute or a moment or a second or more than that in a day to laugh or find something to feel blessed about, feel grateful about.
Yes.
You won't find it if you're in your bed.
It's true. It's very true. And it almost sounds like, I don't know if complex PTSD even fully covers it. It sounds like complex PTSD on top of complex PTSD on top of, you know what I mean? These things are so complex. It's in the name, and it changes your brain, and that's very understandable. So I love what you mentioned about the whole label thing, because even though it can be kind of empowering in a way to receive a diagnosis that helps your brain.
Yep. Sure.
Right.
But then
still,
what do you do with that?
Yes, exactly. Where are you going to go from there? And, understanding that we are so much more than anything on, black and white paper. Right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't define who we are or where we're able to go from there.
No. Right.
And that's a journey in and of itself, right? I mean, for those of us fortunate enough, I guess, if you want to say it that way, to even get a diagnosis. I think a lot of us are kind of walking around without that. But at the end of the day, the label, like you said, respectfully, it matters to the extent of your understanding and how you're going to move in it, but it doesn't matter in the sense that it doesn't have to belittle you as a human. It
doesn't have to limit you, It's just, I guess that would be the definition of mental health then, is just being able to, wrap your mind and your body and your all that it takes around, your how you're feeling and what you're going to do with it. What are you going to let it? And it can knock you down. It did for me. It can knock you down. But what are you going to do after that?
Right. The whole kind of get knocked down 7 times, stand up 8 sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right. So can you share a little bit about some of the judgment and some of the stigma that you have experienced through some of your less than mental wellness moments?
I mean, there's judgment. Okay, what if you have also a physical ailment, okay, like a broken, vertebrae and that kind of thing, and you're in a lot of pain? But if you go to the doctor, I mean, the first thing they're going to judge you on is your mental illness, and then they're going to listen to you through those judging ears, and even your family, can, I don't know, you can really hurt your family, I think, though. If you, I think that's what I did. I think I hurt my kids, and I never intended to, but, trying to ignore it, trying to push through it, trying to act like certain things never happened. Then my kids didn't understand why I was the way I was. I think if I would have been just more honest, maybe that's what another thing that mental wellness is just being honest,
Sure. Yes, but in a way I'm not a parent, but I could begin to fathom how you'd almost want to protect your kids. Like, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going to describe this. Like, I don't want to lay this on them. But I think there is merit in the idea of, had they had better understanding, you may have been able to be lifted up and supported more instead of ridiculed and shunned.
Right. Yeah.
So
because there's a lot of anxiety and stress to you're holding all this in and trying to be and you're being normal and you're working and you're taking care of your family and your house and your job and all your responsibilities, but at the same time you're having all this internal, loud noises and commotion and pain.
Sure.
It comes out as in a lot of ways too, where you're angry or you're stressed out or you have so much anxiety or you're crying, and nobody understands. So I think a little more honesty, if we could just talk and not have the judgment, because you really can't judge. You really can't, unless you really have been through it, and you haven't. You haven't been through what somebody else has been through.
Right.
So you got to stop the judgment. You got to stop that judgment. That's the big thing.
Absolutely. That's the main reason why this campaign even exists, is because if we don't feel like we can kind of be held with our honesty, that honesty starts with ourselves, right? So it starts with having to reflect and having to actually confront and deal with the things that we've been through, which in and of itself is one of the hardest things. I mean, we don't want to feel that stuff. But the thing is that we can't escape the inside of ourselves. Not really. Unfortunately.
Well, I mean, that's where a lot of addiction, I think, comes from,
Yeah.
Which is, I'm lucky that I've avoided that for the most part, But with, people who get addicted to drugs or alcohol, I think they're trying to escape themselves probably,
Absolutely. And like that judgment you kind of mentioned, even just in the doctor's office, if I go and try to get help and I'm just kind of being looked down on in a way, that might lead me to want to turn to, self-medicating or, an escape of one kind or another.
Yeah.
So,
and it happens all the time. It's really unfortunate.
Right. And so, part of this campaign is to kind of break down the stigma and, get these conversations out there in such a way that, okay, we know that, like for me, for example, I can't begin to relate to what your life has been like. But just because I can't understand on the level that you can does not justify to me not caring or not hearing you or not, just kind of being there as a silent type of strength or walking alongside you in your journey. I think that we need to start wrapping our minds around the whole, wow, I can't begin to relate to that. What a privilege.
I mean, empathy. There you go. There's mental wellness definition in one word. Is just being empathetic. You might not be able to fully relate, but you can be empathetic.
Exactly. And there are lots of issues, obviously, playing out on a global scale where we could definitely use that principle of empathy, to make a huge difference. But I wanted to touch on, you mentioned some physical ailments, and I think a lot of us have those. I do a lot of work in the pain community and things, which, when we're being real with ourselves, the whole world is the pain community, right? We're all hurting somehow for some reason. But I think it's a valuable point to make real quick that even if you might not have a specific mental diagnosis, that it can almost be caused by something you're experiencing physically, or, you may have had a relatively healthy life, but then you go through something traumatic. And I like the comment of the spider thing, because each person's trauma is unique to them. So you have lived through things that most people, honestly, let's just be real about it, wouldn't have survived. And you almost didn't at times. It's very courageous for you to own that. And I'm so glad that you're here. But, again, we don't really get to determine what a trauma is from one person to the next. Trauma is a word that used to mean...
It's overused. Yeah.
It is. In a way, like it used to mean only kind of specific things. It's almost like you were around death, right, or you almost died. And both of those are true.
You either saw it or you thought you were going to die. Right. And now it's really evolved, to mean a lot more.
It has, and that's kind of bittersweet because I don't want it to take away from the extensive trauma someone can experience. That's why I like that term complex PTSD. It almost lifts it up like it's a little bit extra, not that we're comparing or anything. But I also like that it's been opened up because I think it's important. I mean, for example, birth is one of the first traumatic experiences that a person can experience, not only for the person, pushing the baby out, but the actual baby getting ripped from one reality to another. I mean, in an essence, that could be labeled as trauma, and we all start that way. So if you look at it from that perspective, and then adding on whatever it is that you deal with in your actual life, it just kind of piles on. And I think trauma can be viewed as a universal thing. And if we start approaching one another like, I don't know your trauma, I'm not here to judge your trauma, I just know that to some extent we've all experienced something, and I'm going to meet you here, you know?
Yeah.
I think that could, really help the world as a whole. So why do you believe, people listening, for example, they might only be wrapping their head around these type of concepts for the very first time. So what is something you could say that, why do you personally believe that mental wellness is important? And why should we care about the concept of mental wellness?
Well, I mean, it affects everything, right, in society, from people being incarcerated to, crime to, kids in school, education. I mean, every aspect of life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it all kind of,
physical, and your physical. I mean, it's definitely tied in, right? So your physical and your mental are. People think it's separate, but it's not.
Right. It's separate in the sense that you might want to approach it separately, like do specific things, right, for specifically your mental health, but also knowing that our mind, our body, and spirit are all
connected.
Really
right?
one. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree. I definitely agree with that. This, like you said, it's relatively new that people are not only taking this seriously, but, there's more studies that have come out, because I think back in the day when you're out there having to hunt your own food and you don't even really have time almost to take something like mental wellness or mental health into consideration. It almost like we almost just kind of disregarded it in the sense that it didn't even exist. And now we can almost get caught up in it to the extent that like nothing else exists
Where
at all.
It's debilitating, right.
So it's about finding that balance. And, you've shared and I've shared that we have those moments. We still have those moments, even as far as we've come in our healing journey. We know it's going to be a lifelong pursuit. And sometimes it is about honoring yourself in those moments and giving yourself a half a day or a day in bed to, but how do we keep ourselves from kind of downward spiraling then?
I mean, that's the thing. The only thing you can do is, even though you think you can't, you got to try anyway. Okay, you have to get out of bed, and you have to push yourself out into the shower or push yourself out the door. Find something. Everybody has something that they can give, and this world needs it. Okay, to help somebody else. That's a great uplifter for depression, or be productive. I mean, it's way easier to be suicidally depressed when you have when you can pay your mortgage.
Yes. Yes. Good point. Absolutely. There is, and I want to be careful how I word this. I hope people, are just open to receiving what aligns with them and not hanging on to every word. But I've come to a point in my own journey where, like, for example, not too long ago, I was having one of those can't days. I just can't.
Right.
And I finally had a thought that said, one day you won't be able to.
Right.
And that was very, so there is this balance of it's almost a privilege. It's almost a privilege in a way to get so caught up in yourself that nothing else matters and nothing else can penetrate.
People really don't like that. Yeah, people really.
I know.
I said it, and people really don't like it. They get very offended. That it's not some kind of privilege to be depressed. But trust me.
No.
Okay, when you are homeless, and you don't know where you're going to sleep, you don't have time to feel like you're depressed. Okay.
That's right.
You don't.
That's right.
So I mean, it is a privilege in a sense. I know people aren't going to like that, but
that's all right. That's part of what I'm here to do is break things wide open, and you don't have to like it, but never underestimate the power of a seed being planted. And where our credibility comes in is we're not speaking from a place that we don't understand. This is what we've lived through and survived, and this is part of how we've been able to do it. So hopefully there's
right. I mean, I'm living right now, the past 4 months this year so far has been just one horrendous, life-altering event and horrifying experience after another. It really has. And, it's only April. So, I mean, yeah, I'm still having I just can't, I
The
can't.
April showers came early, huh? In your life this year. My goodness. And it's like that sometimes. Sometimes we literally experience a lifetime in just a matter of weeks or months.
Right.
But if it wouldn't have been for the inner work, that you've done up until this point, I don't know what it would be like for you to try to take all of this on, And that's what makes it important too. Like you said earlier, basically, this is going to be work regardless. It's going to be work whether you commit to your downward spiral, or it's going to be work for you to climb out of the depths. There's work either way. You just kind of have to make that decision as to where you're going to invest your energy, right?
I mean, that's not popular, but there is a decision involved. You can say I can't, and then you won't, you just, and then there's nothing's going to get better though. Nothing will change until you change it. Now, medication is never going to cure it. Talking to a counselor is not good. These are fine things and tools that people can use.
Yeah.
But the bottom line, is you need to, you might be depressed in your bed, but you can push yourself out and, be depressed at your job, and at least you're making some money. And maybe you'll have a moment where you'll experience something funny or heartwarming or, caring or, I mean, you
yes.
just. Yeah.
There's more to life than how we feel. And it doesn't always feel that way, literally. But, it does come down to almost that personal responsibility and that personal accountability for your own quality of life. I mean, like you said, there's these days more than ever. I mean, online resources, teleconference with a therapist, whatever it is, there's lots of things available to us. But pursuing it and then the understanding of any person or thing outside of myself can really only take me so far.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Yes, and that to me is why mental wellness and mental health matter, because, like you said, it's rooted in everything. And the very quality of life depends on the quality of our thoughts. Like we experience, things can happen to us externally, of course, but we experience the entirety of our lives on the inside of ourselves. So if you don't check in on your climate, if you will, on your temperature, on what season is going on in there, what kind of storms, then I like to say, in my experience, my whispers turn to screams.
Yeah.
From the inside out. And ultimately I was left with no choice. Like I got pushed to my limit, and it was either like, you're going to check out or you're going to fight for your life by any and all means necessary. Because nobody else can do that for us, and like you said, there are other things that we can use as modalities and treatments and therapies and things like that, and that's great. But when it's you, curled up in that fetal position, on the cold floor, not knowing how you're going to get up, how are you going to get up, right?
Right.
So I guess that leads me into another question is, what are some things other than, because let's back it up a little bit. Like now where we're at in our journey, it's almost easy, and I put that in quotes because none of this is easy, but it's almost easy to be like, well, I cannot unpack and live here in this muck because that's not going to be helpful to me. But we kind of have had this almost evolution in our journey. So for someone who maybe can't quite digest all of that yet, what are some things that kind of helped lead to that point that assisted you in the pursuit of your mental wellness, or what has been most helpful to get here?
I mean, everybody has to find their own thing, whether it's spiritual, artistic, maybe it's, being productive, maybe it's, serving others, maybe it's religion. I mean, but you have to find, maybe your inspiration comes from, the people who love you, it's I don't know. It's really, really hard. It's hard. It's hard, and it's hard for me to talk about right now because I'm not feeling the most mentally healthy.
Sure. Yeah, that's okay.
I'm having a hard time. But what am I going to do? I can surrender any day. I can. I could give up today.
Yes.
But I'm not
yes,
going
we
to.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. Me either. We all, have.
You never know. Like, you really never know also. I mean, miracles happen and things get better and, so. I can understand it, though.
Yes, of course. Of course. We're coming from a 110% place of understanding. And so wherever you're at in your journey, whoever's listening, know that it's more than okay and that it counts for something to have made it to this point. I like that you mentioned the service of others, because I don't know if you agree with this, but for me personally, if my life were just about me and my pain, I'd be long gone.
That's the thing, yeah.
I'd be long
Sometimes
gone.
It's the only thing you could, it's the only thing you can do is help somebody else, and that can help you, okay? It really can. And I think that's one of the biggest things. I think that's one of the reasons that we're here is to help each other,
Yes.
And you do help yourself when you're helping others.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that's all you can do, There's always somebody who's in worse shape, believe it or not. Always.
I do believe it. Yeah. And an important little disclaimer there is that acknowledging that capital T truth, that's how I view it, because that's the truth, does not take away from or belittle you or your experience.
Right.
It doesn't have to mean that you've been any less impacted or that you don't hurt or that it didn't happen or whatever the case is. It's kind of like, this is true, and, there can be a balance of more than one thing being true at one time. And for those out there, which I know this has been you at times, as you shared, you might not necessarily feel like you have a support system or that you are surrounded by people who love you. So that's kind of where that idea of self-love comes into play. And even if we don't necessarily identify with that terminology, like, I don't really feel like I love myself, every moment that we choose to not throw in the towel, to me, in a way, is loving ourselves. And to me, in a way, is prevailing, that moment by
moment.
Truly,
sometimes it's a minute-by-minute thing. It really, really is.
Yes.
Minute by minute,
Yes.
And you have to celebrate any, even little, which somebody else would maybe think was a little accomplishment, that you could take a shower or get out of bed or, make a meal or something, But I think, if you don't like the word self-love, just some self-care. And because, we don't always have other people around who love us. We don't. Not everybody does, Yeah. And
so you damn well better be one of them. You know what I mean?
Yes, you have to care for yourself. And I think,
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
hard too sometimes.
Of course.
It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing. But
you know what? I would say surviving is the most courageous and most difficult thing that we can do. Right. And maybe not even just surviving. Once we get past kind of the survive, like, okay, I made it through all of this. How am I going to live now? How am I going to actually exist as opposed to just kind of like coasting through life, So being someone who has experienced what we refer to here as the depth, it's what we're talking about. Again, if I'm not quite at the point that I can consider the dwelling almost a privilege, type of thing, like that might be a bit too offensive right now. What is it that you would tell someone right now who is currently in those depths themselves?
I think be gentle with yourself and not be so critical of yourself and not be so judgmental of your own self, We didn't, a lot of times, the people who were supposed to love us, maybe like when we were growing up, they failed, But that doesn't mean that we're not worthy, And And maybe the people around us don't appreciate us, or maybe they judge us or don't see us how we really are. So we just really have to, I totally agree with this, be, just gentle and kind and loving to ourselves, And I don't think there is anything wrong with taking a day or, whatever, a week or whatever you need, but you can't live there. You can't live there, okay? Because then everything it just really does boil down to, you have to just do it. It's hard, but if, you have to make the decision that you're going to, do one thing today, that's productive or, kind or what, find one thing that you have to be grateful for, because we all have it. We all do. Everyone does. Everyone does. Okay? So I think we do have to remember all of our blessings, and I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely. We are our own worst critics, right?
Oh, yeah.
To me, I don't know if you identify with this, but a big part of my journey has been addressing and kind of reprogramming my inner dialogue.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons I say that language matters. It not only matters out here in the world with the way we correspond with one another, but it really matters in between our two ears.
What we're saying to ourselves. Absolutely. Yeah.
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 That can be the difference between,
it can.
Let's just
sometimes it just seems like the world is just not working out real well, and things are just, we keep trying and it's still not working, and it's so disheartening and discouraging, I think you should, you have to, that's where, you have to be able to talk, we should be able to talk about it, and listen and find support. There's so many places to find support. Even if you don't have a person in your life, there's places online where other people are going through very similar things, believe it or not. You feel like you're completely alone in a lot of it, but you're not. There's other people that are dealing with it too, whether it's the physical pain or, depression or even really horrific things. There's support. And it's really important. It's important to have other people that understand, and sometimes you can't hold yourself up. But you have been such a support to me so many times. So
back at you, back at you, and that's what we're here to do. It's not about what I went through is worse than what you went through, and my pain is worse than your pain. It's like, how can we meet each other in the middle on the human level? Take everything else out of it, because like I was saying, our experiences are different, but the impact, like on our emotions and our mental and our physical, like that is so similar. And we know, you peel our skin back, for example, we are 99.9% the same as a human species.
The little things you could do, you could listen to some music, you could do some writing, you could watch a comedy,
Sure. Go for a walk.
Again, you could, that's good. Play with your pets. Go, if you don't have a pet, go to the Humane Society and pet some pets. Just little things, okay? Little things.
Reach out
you will find, it might surprise you, okay? But you'll be out, and for 10 minutes, you didn't think about yourself. For 10 minutes, you didn't think about how shitty you feel. And tomorrow could be 20 minutes. It really can be minute by minute, but you can get better. You can make your life a little better, or maybe a lot better, but not if you don't even try. It's never going to get any better if you don't even try. I had, I'm not judging anybody. I had my plenty of time where I thought I can't get up. I can't. But I can, because I'm physically able to. Okay, so it's my brain telling me that I can't, You got
to understand that after years and years and years of pushing things down, of being silent,
Yep.
of not having support, of having no one there to believe you or validate you, that kind of stuff, and kind of pushing it down and pushing it down. I mean, you're going to hit a wall. Like, there is going to very literally come a point that you can't, because your body is kind of like, look, man, we've had enough. We can't take it anymore. You know, and it kind of leads to this newer term I came across of emotional constipation. You know, and so I love that you mentioned, like, it doesn't even exactly matter how you go about getting this stuff outside of yourself. Draw something.
Yeah.
Write a letter and burn it in the fire for all I care. You know, just do something to rid yourself of all the weight you have to carry.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And you will. I remember the first time. I remember where I was the first time that I actually, I was, you know, suicidal and was drug out of the house by my sister, and in a car, you know, and they were talking, and it was funny, and I started laughing, and I realized that I had just, 20 minutes had just passed, and I had not thought about, myself, or how horrible I felt, or how depressed I was, and these times might be just coming, little moments like that, but they're out there, but they're not in your bed in the dark, in the fetal position. They're not. You're only going to feel worse. You are only going to feel worse. And I don't know, you know how I feel about, medication. I mean, it's a tool, I suppose, but you got to be really careful with that. There's no harm in going and talking to a therapist or whatever. But bottom line, I mean, it really is, in my opinion and in my experience, you have to make the decision, that you're not going to stay there in the depths of hell, and it is like hell,
Yes, absolutely.
If that takes you looking around and saying, things could be so much worse. I could be living, again, homeless. I could have no food. I could, there are all kinds of, it could be in a third world country. I just wonder sometimes how many people in a third world country are depressed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, not a lot of time for it.
Yeah, right. And so, I think it's important, to go back to that concept of moment by moment decision. For me, honestly, it's breath by breath oftentimes.
It can be. Sure. Yes. Yes. Yep.
And the other valuable thing, I think, and tell me if you agree with this, but it's not a matter of ridding ourselves of the darkness. It's not a matter of disregarding
it doesn't go away.
As though it doesn't exist. Yeah, exactly. It comes down to almost like a coexistence.
Yeah, it's learning to live with it, okay? As sad as that is, okay? But it's because nothing's going to cure it, right? So you learn to live with it. You learn to be productive with it. You learn to serve others with it. You learn to count your blessings with it. And you know what? It can lighten up. It can. Maybe it'll never go away. I guess probably it'll never go away. But it can definitely get better. And you're not, and don't, I think also it can get better and then it can get bad again,
Sure.
But the more you go through it, the stronger that you get. And that's the thing that people, every single person, anybody that's listening to this, that understands depression and being suicidal, you are strong, okay? You're strong just to be here, okay?
Right.
You're like super strength.
So true. It's so true. Yes.
And to even want to try to get help. And it's so discouraging sometimes to go to a doctor and, the way that you get treated sometimes. And so it takes superhuman strength, I think, to carry on with depression. And even if that means you just push yourself out of the bed today and go and get into that shower, or, make yourself something to eat, or, tell yourself that you're worthy, it takes a lot of strength.
It does. And like that concept of being gentle and kind to ourselves can seem very foreign, but then I like to think about the way we treat a good friend or the way we treat a loved one, right? We don't ridicule them. We don't tear them down. We don't make them feel worse than they already do. We come at them with love and care. And so it's always
really good.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
like, why
that's
don't we extend that to ourselves?
When you say what can you do, that's something you can do. You can think of what would I do if this were someone I love? What would I do for my mom, or what would I do for my best friend, or my husband, or what would I say? And then just give that to yourself.
That's right. Yes, and that in and of itself is not something that most of us came into the world equipped with. So it is another kind of discipline that you have to practice. This is all a practice. This is all a lifelong practice. There's no finish line. There's no gold medal. There's no guidebook. There's no correct way. I like to think of ourselves as an extension of nature, and how nature is always kind of going through these different seasons. There's storms that completely disrupt everything. And then there's spring where everything's coming up and it's fresh and new again. And I like to think of ourselves that we can kind of go through those extremes and all that turmoil and still make it and still be strong and still be beautiful, in our own ways, and know that we have something to give. Someone can learn something from us, and we can learn something from someone else.
That's another thing, that's a really good point, because everybody, no matter how you feel right now, today, how low or worthless, you have something to give. You do. Even if you think you don't, even if you think there's nothing, you have something to give to this world, we all do.
Yes, and perhaps even especially if you've gone through things like this, because it cultivates almost a sense, it can, if we allow it at least, a sense of softness, a special kind of heightened compassion and empathy, which, that's a story for another time, but the world needs, now more than ever, right?
Right.
So I like that we touched on that concept of nurturing kind of your inner child, maybe going back to the parts of yourself that weren't cared for or loved on the way that they should have been, and kind of reaching that point again of the self-responsibility and accountability and ownership. Maybe I didn't get what I needed all the time, so I'm going to provide that for myself. How am I going to do it? And I love that you said shower.
And I think, and congratulate or be kind to yourself, even just your tiny little steps.
Celebrate.
That might seem like, celebrate. Celebrate.
Yeah, because they are victories. Even the smallest steps. For example, I can't always take a full shower. Sometimes it takes me days to get a full shower, and that's okay. I've come to terms with that. It really used to bother me. Especially with what my life once looked like as opposed to now, but. It doesn't matter as long as we just keep pushing, like you say. We keep trying. We keep showing up for ourselves, because there can be light found. There can be a new hobby. There can be a passion. There can be laughter. But if we're no longer here, then none of that is possible anymore. Right? And I love what you touched on. I actually plan on presenting on this at some point, but I'd label it as logical gratitude. So when nothing else is working, I have no hope left, I have no faith, I'm even running out of curiosity for better days. What I have been able to cling on to, and it sounds like you have as well at times, the only thing left is well, if I'm going to lay in bed all day and I can't get out, at least I have a bed.
Exactly.
At least I have a shelter. At least I'm not freezing.
I have a pillow. I have a blanket. There is always something. There is.
There is.
There's a lot of cliches, and I know some. I'm not the happiest person in the world, so I'll meet a lot of people, in my jobs, and they'll be like, "Oh, every day that you're breathing is a good day," or something like that. And I'm just really okay. I'm glad for you.
You're privileged.
But every day that you're breathing is a chance to make your life better. And you deserve it. Okay.
Yes. Especially having been strong enough to make it to this point, you almost owe it to yourself. And the world ain't gonna hand it to you, so you got to go out there.
And people and anybody who thinks that it can't happen to them, because there's people like that too, who think, they could never get to this. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't mean to be gloomy, but for instance, you could have had this wonderful marriage and wonderful life and wonderful family, and then your husband decides to divorce you, or your spouse dies, or or all your kids move out, and all of a sudden you have, empty nest, which can be, really depressing. I mean, and you could have had perfect mental, health your whole life. That's why I don't like the labels, I mean, you can be perfectly mentally healthy, but still have life experiences that knock your ass down.
Absolutely. I mean, this pandemic was a perfect example of that.
Oh, yeah.
It?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're literally all only one instance, one occurrence, one accident away from our entire life being changed forever.
So when we're talking about like not wanting people to judge us, we have to really stop judging ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, and comparing ourselves. Because I did that. I would be like, well, that person has such a better life because, they have so much support and they had this wonderful family growing up, and, these things didn't happen to them. Well, you know what? They might not even be still standing if they had, So you can't compare yourself to other people and then make yourself even feel worse,
Yes, that's not exactly helpful or self-serving or, going to make you feel better, right? So, I guess we kind of try to steer away from the cliches, even though there's truth in a lot of them. But can you describe like an affirmation or a quote or a slogan or something of some kind that maybe crosses your mind when the darkness attempts to creep back in, that kind of helps recenter you or assist you during those difficult moments?
I mean, I have a lot of like self-hatred really from growing up, and being abused. And that kind of stuff, right? And so I think what I already said, when the people who were supposed to love you failed, it doesn't make you unworthy, okay? And it's true, We got to stop like trying to, our self-worth can't come from somebody else or your boss or your job or your, spouse or, it's got to come from, you have to feel it inside. You have to know that you are worthy, you are loved, and you are, strong, and you are beautiful and smart, and, you have to believe these things.
Yes. Yes, because if we kind of give that power away almost, to others, we will be left empty every time. And we don't want to, I kind of look at it almost.
It's really sad because I have kids.
Yeah.
I've had kids a long time, and I see, the effect, that a teacher who's negative could have on, the same opposite if it's a really positive teacher or your peers, and how you internalize that and then decide that that's what you're worth. And I think it has,
Yeah. Well, we covered kind of a lot. I'm just curious if there's any final thoughts on your mind or anything that we almost didn't cover that you'd like to leave our listeners with.
I don't know. I guess just really, breath by breath, like you said, and I think, I don't know. Reach out, and find, we're here. We want to help. We usually have much lighter conversations and can probably make you laugh. So
yes. But these are important, and this is how we're going to get to those other conversations is by having these ones, right? But, this has been tremendously insightful, and I feel that anyone who takes the time to listen will benefit and will leave with a renewed kind of sense of strength that they may have not possessed before, or you actually always have possessed it. Maybe you're just now kind of tapping in. So, Dee, I'd just like to take a moment to validate all of your experiences and convey to you that it's such a gift to have had you here. It's such a gift to still have you here in this earthly realm, and to provide a platform for the sharing of your story. And I also just want to take a moment, because I'm not sure how many times this has been said to you, even though you deserve it a million times over. I am sorry that it has rarely been an easy road. But your life is truly a testament to the capabilities that we all have inside of us to persevere. You are something like the definition of prevailing, so it's very fitting that you're part of the May We Prevail campaign. And I'm so proud to know you and honored to have had you here as a guest on this show. So thank you again so much for your courage. It is my belief that when we share our stories, they become a part of others' survival guide. And there's no doubt in my mind that you've assisted in saving lives today.
Well, thank you for saying that. I hope it's true. And I always wanted to say this. It's been my pleasure.
Good. Well, I hope to have you again then. I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.